Hello everybody, welcome back to another A Beginner's Guide to, and yeah, it's been a minute. Welcome to Lost Box. Okay, so let's get this out of the way. There are a ton of ways to play Lost Box, and I've got another series I've just started called Dexplained, where I will try and target Lost Box decks as they come up in different tournaments, and try and talk about a variety of different ones. This is the one I'm focusing on today, and it is a hybrid, I guess, of the Turbo Lost build and the Kyogre Lost build. So let's get into it, shall we? As usual, we're starting with the typical cards that come in a Lost engine or a Lost deck. We have Comfey. We're using it for the ability Flower Selecting. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may look at the top two cards of your deck, put one of them into your hand, put the other into the Lost Zone. Very important, we're trying to build the Lost Zone. As we all know, we're trying to hit the three big numbers: 4 for Cramorant, 7 for Mirage Gate, 10 for Sableye. It's the way to go, it's the way it is, and we all know. We all know. Speaking of, we have Cramorant, has the ability Lost Provisions. As mentioned, if you have 4 or more cards in the Lost Zone, ignore all energy in this Pokemon's attack costs. And that means Spit Innocently does not need the 2 water and 1 colorless required to hit 110 damage. This attack's damage isn't affected by weakness. Fantastic little card, great to set up some damage numbers. Next up we have Sableye. The most important attack obviously is Scratch for 1 colorless and 20 damage. But if you don't want to use Scratch, you can of course use Lost Mine for 1 Psychic Energy, I guess, which has the little effect of you can use this attack only if you have 10 or more cards in the Lost Zone. Put 12 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. Oh, is that Raikou back there on 180 damage? Have 2 damage counters. Dead. It's a beast. I love and hate Sableye so much. As is relatively typical in these kind of decks, we have Radiant Greninja for the ability Concealed Cards. You must discard an energy card from your hand in order to use this ability. Once during your turn, you may draw 2 cards. It also has the attack Moonlight Shuriken, which gets used a fair bit. 2 water energy, 1 colorless. Discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. This attack does 90 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. Don't apply weakness and resistance for bench Pokemon. We have 2 utility Pokemon. We have Manaphy, ability Wave Veil, prevent all damage done to your bench Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon, and Pidgeot V. We generally don't attack with this, but there is the option to. The main thing it's there for is the ability Vanishing Wings. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is on your bench, you may shuffle it and all attached cards into your deck. Why is that good? Forest Seal Stone. I'm going to jump forward a little bit just to show you Forest Seal Stone if you don't already know. You attach it to any Pokemon V and it gives you access to the V-Star power. Ability Star Alchemy. During your turn, you may search your deck for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So rather than leaving a Pidgeot on the bench that you probably don't want to use, don't want to attack with, you play down the Pidgeot V, you attach the Forest Seal Stone, you find the card you need, then Vanishing Wings, it all goes back into the deck and you've got a free bench space again. It's a very cool combination. And our 2 arguably main attackers are Dragonite V. We have the attack Shred, which generally doesn't get used. 50 damage, 2 colorless. This attack's damage isn't affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. But the main attack is Dragon Gale, 250 damage, 2 water, 1 electric. This attack also does 20 damage to each of your benched Pokemon. Manaphy doesn't prevent that, just so you know. But it's 250 damage. Pretty huge. That's taking out quite a lot of the format right now, if at least not setting it up for a Sableye knockout later. And speaking of later, your endgame attacker, Kyogre, 130 HP, Aqua Storm, 2 water energy, 1 colorless. Discard the top 5 cards of your deck, then choose 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This attack does 50 damage for each energy discarded in this way to each of those Pokemon. Don't apply weakness and resistance. So you're doing a maximum of 250 damage to the bench, which if they've got 2 Pokemon V out there, or 2 small basic EXs, they're being knocked out 4 prize cards. So the idea behind this deck is early game you're using Cramorant to set up damage and Dragonite V to take out some cheeky knockouts early on. Sableye just to sprinkle a bit of damage as well, but you're trying to finish up with Kyogre by having basically nothing left in your deck and energy recycling and super rodding energy back into it for Kyogre to take advantage of. So let's go through the items we have available to us. We have 4 Battle VIP Pass. You can use this card only during your first turn. Search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon, put them onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. We have Echoing Horn. Put a basic Pokemon from your opponent's discard pile onto their bench. If you're looking at your opponent's bench, you've only got 1 Pokemon to knock out, or maybe they've got 2 Pokemon but one's a bit too chunky, more than 250 HP. Bring back a Luminion maybe and just Echoing Horn, knock it out with Kyogre. Next up, 2 Energy Recyclers. Shuffle up to 5 basic energy cards from your discard pile back into your deck. As mentioned, you want to try and empty your deck, then refill it with Energy Recyclers so Kyogre definitely hits for the damage it needs to hit for. 3 escape rope, each player switches their active Pokemon with one of their bench Pokemon. Your opponent switches first, mostly to get Comfeys into where they need to be. Hisuian Heavy Ball, look at your face down prize cards. You may reveal a basic Pokemon you find there, put it into your hand, and put this Hisuian Heavy Ball in its place as a face down prize card, then shuffle your face down prize cards. 1 Lost Vacuum, you can use this card only if you put another card from your hand in the Lost Zone. Choose a Pokemon tool attached to any Pokemon or any stadium in play and put it into the Lost Zone. I know I said it was a turbo hybrid earlier. Usually Lost Vacuum you'd be running about 3 of, just to make sure you can get like 7 in the Lost Zone in the first turn. It's wacky to see, but it happens. It happens. For Mirage Gates, you can use this card only if you have 7 or more cards in the Lost Zone. Search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards of different types, attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like, then shuffle your deck. 3 Nest Balls, search your deck for a basic Pokemon, put it onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. I feel like I don't need to say shuffle your deck. Pal Pad, shuffle up to 2 supporter cards from your discard pile into your deck. What, you want to use Clara 4 times? Of course you can if you want to do that. 2 Super Rods, shuffle up to 3 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards from your discard pile into your deck. So if you end up losing that Kyogre early for whatever reason, or the Dragonite, you can bring them back quite quickly and easily. Again, Nest Balls will find them too. 4 Switch Cards, switch your active basic Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. If you do, heal 30 damage from the Pokemon you move to your bench. Very good for fixing numbers if Sableye is a problem. Stadiums, we have 2 Artisan. Once during each player's turn, that player may search their deck for a basic Pokemon that doesn't have a rule box and put it onto their bench, then that player shuffles their deck. It's basically a non-rule box Nest Ball in a stadium. Very nice to fill out the bench. Supporters, we have 4 Colrus. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, put 3 of them into your hand, put the other cards into the Lost Zone. Again, very good for building up. You want to try and get to at least 7 ASAP. You can do that turn 1 going second, and then Mirage Gate into something. It's such a fun deck. 1 Clara, choose 1 or both. Put up to 2 Pokemon from your discard pile into your hand. Put up to 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. So if you've got a Sableye in the active, it gets knocked out, you can bring them straight back. It's not a problem. Just get them back in there. We have 2 Roxanne. You can only use this card if your opponent has 3 or fewer prize cards remaining. Each player shuffles their hand into their deck, then you draw 6 cards, your opponent draws 2. Might not seem good if you're planning on trying to whittle down your deck so you got as little in there as possible for the energies, but sometimes you end up with a handful of energy. You need to get it back into the deck somehow, and Roxanne's a really good way to do that. 2 Forest Sealstone, as already mentioned, and then for energy we have 3 Electric, 3 Psychic, and 5 Water for a total of 10. It's a very, very good deck, and like I said, there are many variations. I don't want to turn this into a huge video where we talk about each one, but I will definitely highlight a couple of them maybe in the comments and stuff like that as well. And like I said, I will cover more Lost decks in my Dexplain series as well, as best I can. So yeah, I'm not going to make any recommendations for changes on this one because I think it's a great deck as is. And again, the changes would end up maybe turning it into a deck that isn't the same kind of like game plan as this one is. Lost Box is interesting, isn't it? Because like realistically, game plans always get 4, 7, 10. Well, unless you don't like Sableye for some weird reason. And then it changes from there. There's a build that's Dragonite, Raikou, Drapion. You got your 2 prizes, take big hits. You got your single prizes in Sable Charizard. Then you got Kyogre. You know, there's a ton of ways to play it, but this is probably one of my favourites so far. And I'm not saying it's the most simple, but it's definitely fun. Like I said, I like the Pidgeot V inclusion. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, do let me know in the comments. If there's any decks you'd like me to cover in either Dexplained or a beginner's guide to, let me know in the comments. All the social media links are in the description below. If you enjoyed this, do consider dropping a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!